My key dialogue will start right about now, and what these two titans will be speaking about in just a few minutes will be, of course, having this fireside chat between themselves is building Africa's resilience in a changing global economic order. We can't wait to hear the chat from Mr. Governor and Madam DG. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think, again, I would like to thank Dr. Okonjo-Iweala for a very, very broad-ranging and deep insights into the way and manner in which the global trade order has moved, and surprises in some respects and less so in others. Thank you very much. You've spoke about how the, obviously you sit in a very vantage position because you see how different countries and different actors have responded to the changes in geopolitical fragmentation. And I wanted to ask you, much as you've spoken about the architecture of global trade and how it has shifted, what would you say, or how it has shifted or how it has not shifted, as the case may be? What would you say, and I need to be, I'm very sorry to put this to you in a very selfish manner, but I can't help but ask you, what does that mean for economies like ours, Nigeria, built on the assumption of open multilateral rules?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, congrats on a wonderful speech as well. And then I want to welcome my husband, who arrived whilst we were talking. He's sitting right there. I wanted him to come, but he thinks economists are boring. He's a surgeon, and he keeps running away. He says that whenever economists get together, they always talk shop. And they never relax like doctors. So, but he's here, so that's really nice. Ike, welcome. Yesterday was our 47th wedding anniversary. So you talked about, in this era of geoeconomics, fragmentation, and trade turbulence, what should countries like Nigeria be doing? That was the question I was going to ask you. I thought I would put that to you so you could tell me what you think that Nigeria and Africa should be doing at this time. But look, seriously. They are difficult. We're in a very difficult era multilaterally. But the way I look at the world is to always look at what are the opportunities within crisis. Because if you don't think that way, you get paralyzed. You become despondent and you think everything is going wrong. And when you really look at what is happening within this crisis, you can see opportunities for a country like Nigeria, for Africa as a whole. And my big question is the question of whether we will seize these opportunities or we will make bilateral deals, country to country, that don't necessarily favor us bilaterally sometimes, and miss opportunities for the continent and subregions as a whole. So what do I see? Globally, we are seeing that the geoeconomics is leading to changes in the way supply chains are configured. Some people, as you said, are talking of reshoring or onshoring. That was very popular in the beginning, but I think that many are beginning to see that reshoring and onshoring may not be all it's cut out to be, right? Because that has its own risks as well. But there's some of that. But, you know, I talk to the CEOs of the biggest shipping companies in the world periodically. And what they're seeing is the need to diversify supply chains and supply routes. not to be so concentrated. We found we're so over-dependent. Again, that's the word, my word that I use. The way some of our supply chains are configured, how can you think about it? 95% almost of semiconductor chips may be from Taiwan. Remember when we had COVID-19? 80% of the world's vaccines came from 10 countries, and therefore some had to wait in the queue when the COVID hit. Think about it, 70% of the world's critical minerals or more are processed in China. 30% of the rare earths are in China. So we have built up some over-dependencies. The US is saying that we're too dependent, some countries are too dependent on them for markets, and they feel cheated. So in this, there's an opportunity, because these supply chain CEOs, shipping CEOs have their own, but those leading important global supply chains in different sectors, from automobiles to pharmaceuticals to even furniture to supply to, you go on, are looking to diversify. And that is where we in Africa can do better to attract these supply chains. And Nigeria can too. It will not fall on our lap. We have competition. In Latin America and Asia, most of them are diversifying to Asia now and a bit to Mexico. So in short, let me just say that if we can get our house in order, we are capable of attracting in this country and this sub-region. I see chances for critical mineral supply chains linked to renewable energy, because we have some of the critical minerals and rare earths between us, Ghana, Guinea, all along the West African coast. I don't think it should be just a country-by-country affair. I think we need to think of sub-regional supply chains that take us from processing all the way to EV batteries or something along that line. So I see good opportunity, but are we willing to do what it takes for the right leadership, governance, infrastructure to be able to make this work? And the administrative obstacles in our way, when businesses want to invest and they have to run from one office to the other, maybe given something or the other under the table, let's be honest with ourselves. Are we going to be attractive, or are we going to do away with those things? So that is so I throw it back to you. Are we going to be attractive and do what it takes? So are we going to do our usual thing and manage it? In Nigeria, we always say, let's manage now. Everything is managed. Or are we going to be excellent and attract some of those opportunities?
Well, thank you very much for throwing it back to me. I ducked, so the ball has gone that way. I would say that perhaps the best way to respond to your question is to use the central bank as an example, and to say that we have come a very long way in understanding better who we really are and what we are meant to do by virtue of being the Central Bank of Nigeria. We've recognized the fact that we are custodians, and a lot of the economy depends on us doing the right thing. And we're very clear on what the results of not doing the right things have been. Inflation gone up over a period of time. Reserves at a point in time got down to an all-time low of about 3.3, and even below, to be honest. When we took over, it was 3.3, but even below. And confidence was lost in the economy. In such a situation, you would neither have investors wanting to come in, nor those Nigerians wanting to hang around for too long. And there was a need to understand that and work very hard to rebuild confidence in the economy and rebuild confidence in particular in the central bank. And we did the things we had to do to ensure that happened. We made our processes more transparent and open. We ensured that our policies were credible and clear to people. We avoided policy flip-flops, and where there was need for us to tweak certain things, we were, humble enough to come out and say, yes, there's need for us to do this. Okay, it's not a short dash, it's a journey. And also to take difficult decisions with respect to the foreign exchange market and the banking system. And I believe that the outcome of that has been positive. And you said something earlier during your presentation. You said that the figures speak for themselves. And that is exactly a fact. The figures do speak for themselves. And I also believe that the morale and the confidence of the staff of the bank has gone up quantumly. We see ourselves as having redirected our mandate to the core aspect of what the central bank is meant to be. Orthodox monetary policy to maintain price stability. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, I think that's great. And we must not underestimate the impact of having an island, and you've worked hard at it, of excellence in an economy to show the way. And so what the central bank has done in trying to model itself, to put its money where its mouth is, so to speak, has been very good. I think, my challenge, not just two challenges I think we have. One is how to get this into the real economy. Because until Nigerians, as I said in my speech, until we can impact the real economy and Nigerians can begin to see the benefits of the reforms. It wasn't easy what you did, and there was a lot of criticism. It will not be easy to get the house in order on the fiscal side. And the only way you get public support is when people know that there are going to be benefits coming from this. That was the same challenge we faced when we did the reforms. And for us, I also say the numbers speak for themselves. Don't believe me, but if you go and look at AEMF numbers, you saw that the economy was growing at 6% per annum over that period, and we created lots of jobs. So I think what I would want you to do is working with the other members of the economic team to try to push this excellence into the real economy so that we can create opportunities and jobs for young people, and we can have more of them saying, this works really well. But let me throw another challenge, and that's on AFCFTA. You mentioned it. I really think it's one of the best things that best instruments that Africa has going for it. And right now, I know that Nigeria is the chair. I know that Minister Jumoke is chairing, the Minister of Trade. We're chairing AFCFTA this year, and pushing especially on the digital side, which is good. I think there's a unique opportunity for the continent to trade more with itself. Charity begins at home. Why can't we move from 20% trade among clap if you want? Why can't we move from 20%? EU is at 60%. I'm not saying we'll get there, but even if we could double over the next 5-6 years, this trade, let's trade among ourselves. Let's also build an island. This is a continent with a market power that is, we will have 800 million Africans who will be middle class by 2050. 1 in 4 Africans will be of working age population in the world. So we have a lot going for us, but it won't happen unless we drive it. How do you think the AFCFTA is going? A leading question.
Well, thank you very much for that. Two things I will say, and you touched on that earlier before you went into the issue of the AFCA, and that is collaboration between the different arms of government. And honestly, we rose from a recent meeting at the central bank, a high-level meeting, in which we are determined to ensure that that collaboration is not just in word, but in fact. I think you'll be very much aware that the MPC of the central bank has two members of the leadership of the fiscal side. Yes, the PAMSEC of, actually one, I beg your pardon, the PAMSEC, who is a member of MPC, and the board of the central bank has two, the Accountant General and the PAMSEC. And we're going to use our convening power, and we're going to go out on a limb to ensure that that collaboration, as I said, becomes something that will be of great benefit to the country. So that's on the one side. The second thing that I think is very important in response to your question is on the issue of stability. Because really and truly, without stability, the sort of investments we want and the sort of trust between the relative stakeholders is relatively minimized. I remember at a particular point in time, because I used to travel quite extensively on the African continent, and I know that at one point in time, when you go to certain parts of Africa, nobody wanted to touch the naira. Okay, that is now a thing of the past. It is a thing of the past. And even with respect to a common currency for West Africa, which I know you know has been a discussion forever, those discussions, I would say, are taking a different turn now. So to answer your question, I think the willingness for greater collaboration and ultimately trade within the African continent, and I can really speak more from the perspective of the sub-region, which obviously dovetails into the greater continent, has really taken a turn and has strengthened. And I guess part of the reason for that is obviously there's a response to what is going on elsewhere in the world, and the understanding that, and I have said it to my colleagues from other countries, that look, you know, we had the luxury in the past of not worrying too much about these things, but now we don't have that luxury. Time is against us, and we definitely need to look at these things in a determined manner, bring down the barriers where they can be brought down, and at least begin the process of having a serious conversation as to how to ensure that we can execute, rather than just having, you know, nice conversations which really don't go very far. So that's my view on that.
Well, thank you. We need more people to speak like you and push like you, isn't it? I think there's one more, another interesting aspect of how we need to think about moving on the continent. And Nigeria, being the largest, country in terms of population, needs to really think about this. And this is something you mentioned, our potential demographic dividend and skills. You talked about the Japa syndrome of people leaving the country, but overall the continent. we can have this 1.4 billion, 1.5 billion population is a big asset. But we know that the vast majority of that are people who are 30 and below. And the issue is, how can we turn this potential demographic dividend to work for us on the continent? How can we ensure that our young people, that it doesn't become a demographic nightmare instead of a dividend? We can't just say we have young people and young population without thinking of how we're going to make sure they have jobs, they're properly skilled, and so on. So that was another area I wanted to explore, because potentially this could work for Africa and the world. How do you see it in the age of AI? You talked about it in a very nice way. Could you elaborate a bit more on how we can turn this into a plus for not only Nigeria, but the continent?
Yes. Thank you very much for that question. In actual fact, that was a question I was going to give you as well.
I was clever this time.
You did. Well, it's obviously a question that any right-thinking policymaker on the African continent should be concerned about. And perhaps, if you'll allow me, I will just share an experience that I had when I was in office in Lagos. When I was in office in Lagos, between 1999 and 2005, when I was the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget. And at that point in time, when the military had gone, the civilians were coming in, and I was tasked with the responsibility of, setting out a blueprint and understanding the issues with respect to the economy of Lagos. And believe me, we went around the world, and I say the World Bank was extremely useful for us at the time. We went to UN Habitat, and a number of reasons why we went there was because we needed to understand why the economy was not working. And a lot of that, sooner than later, we got to realize was linked to the issue of population. The population was growing at a rapid pace. And of course, the economy was growing at a relatively small pace. Really, economy was growing between 2 and 3%, and population about 5-6%. Okay, not necessarily by procreation, but people coming into Lagos from everywhere. And of course, Lagos has a tiny landmass, okay, less than half of 1%. And it became clear to us very quickly that that was not a sustainable model, and that it was a question of time before what was defined as a mega city would collapse if something wasn't done urgently. And understanding that statistic and understanding the risks involved in that statistic, believe you, made a big difference to the way we tackled the problem. Because understanding we didn't have time, okay, we didn't have time. You spoke about infrastructure. The infrastructure needed to be significantly rehabilitated, and a whole host of things needed to go with that. And that, of course, is what led us to the issue of looking for additional sources of revenue, the land use charge, and a whole host of other things that followed with that. It was the desperation in understanding that you are on a ticking time bomb. You are on a ticking time bomb. Now, I am by no means making a case for Lagos. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not. But I would say that the counterfactual is that if those things had not been done, I dread to think what the outcome would have been. Okay, I dread to think. So maybe what that whole thing has helped to do is, lengthen the time that you had available to begin to do the critical things that would involve, creating opportunities for younger people, ensuring that you had a more open, transparent, good, clean governance that would be able to put on right policies and be able to save an economy from collapse. in the case of Africa, I think the same mindset is critical to have, to be able to tell ourselves the truth and say, listen, certain things need to be done, and they need to be done quickly. We need to mobilize resources domestically. And I'm happy to say one of the outcomes of even that, our recent bank recapitalization effort, I'm not sure if you know this, Ngozi, that of the amounts, the almost 5 trillion that we were able to realize, about 75% came from domestic mobilization. We've got to do more of that. Okay, with the dependency on outside funding is a thing that is good, all right, and investment comes to where the environment is enabling, but we must concentrate on generating our own. We must. So I think that is half of the answer to your question. The other half I want to give to you because I'm eager to hear from you on that, given your broad worldwide perspective.
Yeah, no, I want to agree with you that the world in which we live in now, charity begins at home. I really mean it. The world is no longer going to be the way it was. We can't expect the same flows of resources, whether it's aid. I see Richard Montgomery is here. You can tell us whether the UK and DFID as willing when they have to pay more for defense and other things. Donors are not going to be providing the same kinds of resources they did. Investment flows will not be coming in the way they did unless we change certain things. So we must also think of how to mobilize domestic resources. And the amount of money that is hidden under mattresses here is amazing. Actually, I think we've been having too polite a conversation. There's a lot of money hidden under mattresses. If you see the construction boom going on in Abuja, it's amazing. Everywhere. So I think there are resources to be mobilized, and the issue is what are the incentives we provide in order to make sure that we corral those resources, not only in Nigeria, but right around the continent. Also, I'm very proud of the fact that we have our own investors that we need. You cannot really attract foreign investment if your own domestic investors are not investing in the country and they don't have a good opinion of it. So I think charity begins at home. We need to find out what are the obstacles they face, what do we need to do to make those more palatable, and they will then be the ambassadors that talk about how wonderful it is to invest here. And if we mobilize domestic resources to provide the needed enabling environment for them, then I think we would have gotten the formula right. But you and me, we are speaking a lot of big grammar here. And from big grammar to actual implementation, that's where, but you've said some encouraging words about the potential for implementation. So I remain very hopeful that we have to get it right. And I want to say one thing, Nigeria bears a great responsibility. We need to grow, develop, and create jobs, not just for ourselves, because we're at least 60-something to 70% of West Africa's GDP, and perhaps about a quarter of Africa's GDP, of sub-Saharan Africa. So we can't just sit around and not do things right, because the way we develop in this country has a big weight on the continent and on the sub-region. So we've got to get it right.
Thank you very much indeed. And I can see time is against us. It's fast spent. One last question, if you don't mind. In another 10 years' time, what would you say that success would look like for Africa? And what do policymakers, governments need to do, private sector need to do to ensure that success takes place?
Leadership. I'm so sorry. It's all about leadership. We've got to have leaders who have the interests of the country and the continent at heart. Not their self-interest, not their group interest, nothing. We need leadership that is transparent. And I'm not asking for perfection. Nobody can be perfect. I'm sure the leaders will do certain things and make certain mistakes. But even leadership that is 75%, not even 100, will take us a long way on the continent, meaning focused on actual implementation of things that work, on creation of jobs for young people, on asking themselves what are the sources of growth in this economy, on looking at what are the real impediments that are stopping the economy from growing, on trying to see that we don't need our young people crossing the Mediterranean or anywhere, and dying, but trying to make our place look attractive. That's what I think it will take. And I think 10 years from now, what I'm hoping is that we will indeed have a continent and a country where young people are not seeking to leave, they are seeking to stay. Where women, you mentioned women and I loved it, are being given the opportunities. Women are very hardworking. They really are. I'm not saying it because of anything. They are ideal multitaskers. And we have to mobilize them to contribute what they need to the continent and the economy. So leadership is it for me. If we have the right leaders who ask the right questions and try to tackle the real problems, we will make it.
Thank you very much.
I'm not against the men, no. I can't be without them. Yeah, my husband is there, so I'm not against the men. He's very supportive. So we need you men. But you know what my joke is? Sometimes the men have to step out of the way and give the women a chance, and then be behind them. So.
Okay, thank you very much. All these women in Central Bank that are clapping like that. That's it. I'm making notes. So thank you very much indeed. This has been a very, very engaging encounter. Actually, you should be the one coming to round this up. But before you do, I just want one more round of applause for the so that you know who you are making a round of applause for. For the two doctors in the house whose anniversary it is, Dr. and Dr. Okonjo-Iweala.
Thank you very much. Thank you. DG, please still sit. Governor, please still sit. The governor of the central bank took it out of my mouth because I just wanted us to wish them a very big congratulations. It's not easy to be married 47 years. I actually wanted to ask a question, what does it take to have that kind of longevity? But I will ask it at another forum. So big congratulations to Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. Thank you very much for taking care of our beautiful, beautiful daughter for the past 47 years. And I know why I said daughter. We come from the same local government area, so she's my big mommy, so I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much. All right, we've just come into the question and answer segment, and we'll be doing that in just a few minutes because the time is fast spent. I know a lot of us in this room have questions. But do think of me like a trusted vault. And, the bank, not Central Bank of Nigeria, that is holding the room's collective curiosity. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to take like 2 or 3 comments from the room, and we have online questions also for the DG and the governor of the central bank. Governor, if he permits me, sir, and the DG. We'll do this very sharply. All right, I will start with, I think, where's Dr. Ndamit Gill? Dr. Ndamit Gill? Oh, okay. Can we also have a second hand here? We'll just take 2 or 3 right here in the room. If we don't have any comments, then I'll be glad to end this session. Oh, okay. Okay, I see one hand here. I won't be able to take every one of you. But we'll have to also make it gender sensitive, right? Yes, so I should take only women, no. All right, Doctor, that's the president of the NES, the Nigerian Economic Society. So we'll take your question. Sir, just go straight to your question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me also join on behalf of all of us here, wish our dear mother and father happy anniversary. You the last question, the last statement about leadership in Africa. But one question I want to ask is that, don't you think also that we need followership that demands integrity, that fights corruption, misinformation, and real integrity among ourselves as followers?
Thank you very much, sir. I guess we should take all the questions, ma'am, then we can go ahead. All right, the next question. The governor has given the permission to the director here. I'm sure the governor is being gender sensitive, so short and sharp.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Rekia Opemi Yusuf, Director of Payment System Supervision Department. Thank you, Ma, for remaining beautiful. And thank you, Daddy, for allowing her to serve not just Nigeria, but the world. Now, my question is this. Right leadership, you have said it. Recently, Trump did raise tariff against Nigeria and says 12% thereabout tariff on Nigeria imported goods. What are the low-hanging fruits sitting from your office, Ma? Can we be looking at to actually take advantage of the potentials that exist around us so that we will not be a laughingstock as a nation because of that decision of the U.S.? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. One last question. Can we have this aisle? Is there any question from this aisle? Oh, okay. Over there. Please, I'm sorry, we can't take all your questions. Please, thank you. Thank you for your understanding.
My name is Awalu Haruna. I am from ABU Business School. I want to ask this question, hoping that Dr. Ngozi will be on my side. The governor has talked about monetary policy. And we are looking at integration, where the bulk of our societies are small scale. It means there is need for development finance, which CBN is not looking at the moment. The question is, if CBN refuses to do that, which institutions are best placed to ensure this happens? Because without this support to the small-scale systems, it's difficult for us to get to where we want to get to harness the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, so I'll just take these online questions quickly so you can take all your questions and wrap up. Governor, this came for you from our online audience. The first question is, what lessons from Nigeria's recent reforms would you be willing to share with other emerging markets to improve their economic transformation? I know you talked about one lesson earlier, credibility. So perhaps if you have one or two other lessons you can add to it. The other question for you is, how can African economies sustain macroeconomic stability and pursue economic reforms amidst global trade fragmentation, geopolitical tensions, and volatile commodity prices? Then for Madam DG, you have this question, which is, how can the WTO ensure that emerging economies, particularly those in Africa, the Global South, and the Indo-Pacific are central to any new trade agreements rather than sidelined by regional blocs or friend-shoring deals like you mentioned earlier on? The other question for you is, what WTO support will emerging economies receive to diversify supply chains, reduce dependency on single markets, and build resilience against shocks? And perhaps what are the biggest barriers? But I think you've mentioned it earlier on in your speech, so we shouldn't take this because you've answered it in your keynote speech. All right, over to you, ma'am and sir. DG, you can go first, actually. Yes.
Maybe I'll answer one or two, then give the governor so that otherwise I will. Maybe I'll take the question on followership, which is an excellent question. It really is. Because it's not, we talk about leadership because obviously that is key. But followership also matters. And a good leader, for me, one of the marks of a good leader is one that listens to the followership. But then the followership has to demand something, demand the right things. And you said have to demand integrity, transparency, and so on and so forth. So a good followership is absolutely necessary. You can't be a leader if you don't have followers. And you can't be a good leader if you don't listen to your followers. So the issue is, followers, are they willing to raise their voice? Do they have the opportunities in a democracy to raise their voice and make themselves heard? And are they willing to say the right things? And then are the leaders willing to listen? So I agree with you 100% that getting this place, Africa, right, it's not only about leaders, it's also about followers and their willingness to make their voices heard in one way or the other. And also the willingness to have free speech in a place so people don't feel afraid to say what they think in a democracy. Media, obviously, is important, and so on and so forth. So just to say you're right and we need both. On the issue of tariffs, what can Nigeria do? First of all, to take advantage, yes, we have this Section 301 tariffs of the U.S., which came after the AIPA, the emergency tariffs were banned by the Supreme Court. And then under other legal authority, the U.S. Trade Department was able to put these new tariffs on 60 countries. Nigeria is one of them that talks about inability to make sure that goods made with forced labor are not admitted into the economy. And on that basis, a number of tariffs have been levied. There'll be other bases on which countries will be looked at. But you know, Nigeria's exports to the U.S. is exempt. It's oil. Even under the previous tariff regime, we were not really hit that hard because the biggest export we have is exempt from the tariffs. But that should not make us feel comfortable. We should be thinking our trade with the external world, not just the U.S., on things that are non-oil, is improving, but could do so much better. We need to expand the sources of growth in the economy. We need to expand the sources of trade. We need to add value to our products, and we need to trade more. We have a lot of trade agreements that Nigeria can take advantage of. Some of them, we can export goods into certain economies tariff-free. I think China is one now, the European Union to some extent. the US under AGOA, which is still there, it might disappear soon. But our trade is not as robust as it should be. So the issue we should be asking ourselves is how can we add value to products that are non-oil that we can export to other countries? And I think the potential is there. We just need to take better advantage of that. So I'm not so worried about this 12.5% because what are we exporting? We have to start exporting more things, and then we'll start worrying about this 12.5% tariff, okay? I'll do the SMEs and I'll stop and give you before the last two. SMEs, another brilliant question. I can't find the gentleman who asked, where is he? Really great comment. SMEs are the driver of almost every economy in the world, developed and developing, emerging markets or not. In many countries, 90% of the enterprises are SMEs or more, and they generate most of the employment. So we really need to worry about how to get financing to these SMEs. And I think that here in Nigeria, we need to worry about it because they can help do those things we were talking about. Once the economy is stabilized, they can help create jobs within the economy. You'll find that women are they're really visible among SMEs, and SMEs are at the bottom of most of the production and employment, albeit a lot of it in the informal sector. But the issue is, here I want to talk about what the governor said. We have some institutions. We have BOI, the Bank of Industry, that is led by Dr. Shukbo Lucy. We have the Nigerian Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN. We have several other institutions that should be able to help us. But we need to work hard to mobilize domestic resources that they can then, also use to unlend. And of course, our financial institutions, the banking sector, but often problems with very high interest rates that are not affordable by SMEs. So we need to depend on some of the existing specialized institutions to help us mobilize these resources and unlend them at reasonable rates to SMEs. I totally believe in that. This is one of the ways we can create jobs. So over to you, Governor. But will you help them with this SME finance?
I will address that. I will address it. The issue of SME finance and development finance, I think there are two questions in one. I agree fully that we are in a society, an economy where SMEs play a major role, and we will need to encourage them to continue to do so and to grow and to prosper. Now, one way to do this is to ensure that some of the developmental finance institutions are supported, because you raised the issue about, well, central bank says they are not doing this, therefore who will do it? And let me even explain the issue of central bank not doing it, because I think it's important. It comes up a lot, and I would like to use the opportunity anytime I can to explain a couple of things here. One, really and truly, the way and manner in which we've been used to having central bank intervene is not typical. Much of this is not central bank role. So unfortunately, very unfortunately, much of the fiscal functions were put on the central bank. And of course, there's a price you pay for that, and we're all paying it. High interest rates, foreign exchange rates going out of hand, that's what it is. And quite frankly, that's one side of it. Then you say, okay, the problems already exist. Let's move forward. can you move forward, and to what extent can you move forward? That's another question again, because the extent of the misapplication of intervention on central bank was so humongous that really and truly the capacity to do these things is limited. Okay, so I think that is the other part. And that is why we are able, all these things that the central bank has done to really and truly bring back orthodox way of banking is what has contributed to the stability within the banking industry. This is part of what has contributed to the stability we have today. If we did not do those things, painful though it may be, it would be a lot worse than it is today. Now, let me now go on to the issue of interest rates and how it affects SMEs. Yes, the next stage is that because of these policy flip-flops, let me put it that way, interest rates are high, exchange rates have moderated and are stable. Into the future, my expectation is that over time, interest rates will begin to moderate. Over time, they will begin to moderate. It's a price, unfortunately, we are having to pay, as I said, because of these policy flip-flops. Okay. Now, how can we, in the short term, ensure that the SMEs are at least able to function in some form or the other? One of the things that we have done in the central bank is we've looked at the development finance institutions and we've tweaked around with their ability to lend. We've allowed them to lend more, and we've been a little bit less strict as we would be with the commercial banks, because we know that there is a need for them to be able to support the real sector and the SMEs. And we're constantly looking at these things. The other thing I don't want anybody to take lightly is the fact that now that we have finished a banking recapitalization exercise and the banks have a lot of money at their disposal relative to previously, you're likely to find that there will be more interest in SMEs as rates begin to drop. It's likely to happen because some of the... Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Because you see, some of the quote-unquote arbitrage opportunities, easy money-making opportunities that used to exist have disappeared. We're shutting down the multiple exchange windows and stricter regulation. It's a lot more difficult. So banks are in the business to make money. They will look at how they can tweak their risk models and ensure they can support those areas, the SMEs. And we will encourage them, to be frank. We will encourage them to do so. And we have a few things we are working on that hopefully should be able to result in that. So it's not lost, please. I know it sounds a little bit hard, but I am confident that these are all temporary issues. They are temporary. We will get out of it. We will get to a situation where rates will become more moderate and where it will be easier for SMEs to access credit, not only from the development institutions, but also from the banks. I see that happening. So this is just a temporary glitch, in my view. Now, we also spoke about lessons learned. What sharing can we have with lessons learned for other emerging markets? And I want to say to you that one of the things we are doing, and I'll talk about 2 or 3 things, but one of the things we are doing is because we believe there's been such a fundamental change in our economy. Take for example, foreign exchange market. Many people may not know that the way and manner in which the foreign exchange market operates today is fundamentally different from the way it has ever operated. And let me explain what I mean by that. You know, the question comes up every time about reserves. Our reserve level now is 50 billion plus. And we rarely need to touch those reserves. In actual fact, that's why they are reserves. They are not meant to fund day-to-day activities. They are reserves, and that's why our reserves are, organically going up. Okay? The market itself today, because of a number of things we've done, including transparency, openness, taking out the bottlenecks that impeded investments and people taking out their money. More money comes in, more money goes out, and the liquidity of the system has been greatly deepened. With the result that we seldom have to intervene. The market operates on its own. On some days, we have as much as $1 billion in turnover in a particular day, just one day. So this is a fundamental shift from what has happened before. And as a result of that, I believe that confidence is a clear indication of the fact that confidence has now come back to the market. Some of those things are not done. And we believe that there's a need for us to document a number of the reforms that we did around those areas. And we are going to do so. In fact, we've finished a draft, and in due course, we will document and we'll publish it and let people know that these are the things that we have done that have taken us to a particular place, and those that can borrow from that are welcome to do so. And also, importantly, it's also important that we avoid the policy mistakes of the past, so that in future you can always have reference to a particular book or document which lays it out extensively. And of course, for those of us who are involved in this, if you don't document what you've done, others may come and document it, and when you read it, you may not like what you see. Transparency, integrity, getting the market to trust you, something that DG WTO spoke about, execution. Because we are very good at coming up with wonderful policies. And I say this many times when I talk to central bank staff. We're very good as a country in coming up with policy documents, but execution is the bigger challenge. I'm very pleased to say, though, that what I have seen in the recent past with respect to policy execution gives me a lot of hope for the future for the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then finally, we spoke about how to achieve macroeconomic stability during these very turbulent times we've been speaking about. And honestly, the one thing I would say is perhaps a lot more difficult than it sounds, but is key. And that is staying the course. Staying the course. It is so easy to roll back on a course you've embarked on. Even when it is bringing the results, it is so easy to do so. But you have to be disciplined. You have to be consistent. You have to remember the consequences of rolling back to where you are coming from. And that is what should guide you in staying and ensuring you stay the course.
I see Harinda and Nancy standing. Time is up, but there were two more questions. I'll be very fast. One was about African emerging markets. How can they make new trade agreements? It's a very good question. I feel at the WTO sometimes that so much attention is paid to the existing agreements or the agreements that were not made or the ones that don't work, that we don't have enough room to think about new agreements. African countries should be thinking, if we want to develop, if we want to capture more markets, if we want to do better than 3% of global trade, what types of agreements do we need to make at the WTO that will help us do that? And what type of bilateral and other regional agreements do we need? And I think this is really, really important to do. We've got the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We should implement that. But in addition, there could be other ones. And one I want to mention, and I'll end on this, is that at the WTO, we have an agreement that I actually believe helps to support the next question that I was asked about building resilience and trying to attract supply chains. It's called the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement. And it's what we call a plurilateral. Not every single member belongs to it. There are 131 out of 166 WTO members that came together to put this agreement. It takes away all the, obstacles, administrative obstacles that bedevil investors when they come to our countries. It tries to make administratively so many things easy. So the World Bank doesn't have to put it on you as conditionality to remove this or remove that or do this. It's all in this agreement. And I think that can help us attract investment domestically, our own investment, because our business people have to go through this, regionally and externally, so we can attract supply chains and develop new supply chains. And I think this is one of the things that we're trying to get through at the WTO. It will be very, very helpful. Of those 131 countries, 90 are developing countries. So it's something I'm very, very interested that we do well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. What an intellectual masterclass it has been, but Mr. Governor, you still sit. Madam DG, you still sit. At this point, let me invite Mr. Harinda Koyo for a 2-minute remark. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Before I do my very pleasant duty, I want to make 2 very short comments. One, Mr. Governor, when I was as young in my World Bank days as you are today, one of my jobs was to look after World Bank's global policy on SMEs. And I must say that I never heard such a concise and fascinating tutorial on importance of SMEs, passionate, and yet so good by a central banker. I never thought I've heard such a convincing case why SMEs are important and how to do them properly, financing. Thank you very much. I couldn't have done it better. But secondly, both you in both of your keynote remarks and in the discussion brought on the issues that what does one do after you stabilize the monetary policy and exchange rate, and what next to create jobs and structural changes. And I just want to mention that tomorrow we have 2 ministers of the government, including Minister of Finance, And I'm sure both the ministers and the audience will explore the issues of structural changes and jobs. And we'll try to do that tomorrow. Again, it's my great pleasure and privilege to offer you our sincere thanks on behalf of all three sponsors, including Central Bank, but also the audience for a wonderful set of keynote speeches, but this fascinating fire chat without fire, actually, but a lot of illumination. And there's great dynamics, actually. The interchange between two of you, the warmth, the frankness, the candid remarks. It was great, actually. I think it was a great idea to have this fireside chat. And two of you had a great dynamic. So thank you very much for this great discussion. And now we'll take a short break, and we have this dinner. So I hope we'll see you there. So thank you very much again.